Welcome to the Mediums, Messages, and More podcast. I'm Gene King. So happy that you're joining us today and listening to episode number 2 of our podcast. Today, we're going to take a look into a new industry survey, vital piece of research for the television industry by Hub Entertainment Research, and how it has fortified and confirmed the fears for many of the old school legacy powers in the television industry on just how quickly things are changing in the television landscape and the challenges that are facing traditional television legacy media. And for our purposes and for the research that was done by Hub Entertainment Research, television in this case means live TV. And the way that that is defined for this piece of research that was done in August of 2024, live TV means traditional over the air broadcast television. So think of networks like ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox, networks and channels that you could literally receive by an old school television antenna, free TV. But also clumped into that category is now what is legacy cable television and pay TV. So think of uh, cable systems such as Comcast, Xfinity, or Verizon Fios, or Cox, and DirecTV, satellite television, and think of all of the networks that have, for a couple of generations, gained so much power and revenue, like CNN, for instance, um, and things like the Weather Channel, right, or TNT, TBS, right, Discovery Channel, the Food Network, channels like that. So, just for clarification, this survey, which is now in its fifth year, uh, asks respondents what do they go to as their primary and first choice all the time when it comes to television viewing. And the results of this August piece of research was really daunting for the traditional broadcast networks and for cable. And I don't think it was a shock to anybody, especially inside the industry. They've been aware of what's going on for a while. But there was a lot of anecdotal evidence and then bits and pieces of research over the last couple of years about how those two media segments have been really free falling because of cord cutting and the availability of other sources of television entertainment. And that is definitely what has happened, um, simply because uh, streaming has really emerged, it seems, in 2024. Streaming has really emerged as the new superpower of television. And so this Hub Entertainment Research began this survey 5 years ago. And this August survey really concludes with its data that traditional television and cable television, known as pay TV or live TV, is really following in the footsteps of once dominant media sources, such as print newspapers and magazines and radio, especially AM radio. And that the broadcast networks and the cable channels are experiencing an accelerated decline in popularity and usage as the first choice for consumers when they want to consume content on television. So, Hub Entertainment Research reported in August that in the 5 years that they've been doing this, the highest number yet of survey respondents said that the leading five subscription video on demand platforms, and that is Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Hulu, and Max, are now their routine primary and first choice for any television viewing. And that percentage is 46%. And it is the largest percentage share for these platforms collectively since Hub began its surveys. And in contrast, Hub research reports that the live TV um, fell to 38%, and it was at 53% just 3 years ago. And when Hub conducted its very first survey in 2018, um, live TV, legacy over the air broadcasting plus cable and satellite, was still very dominant, although it had already started to erode. But in 2018, it still had a share of 62%, and now it's at 38%. And the subscription video on demand category, its rise in popularity has been very evident. In 2021, its share was 35%. And in the very first survey, it was 30%. So you can see that over the first several years of this research, those platforms like Netflix and Prime, some of them didn't even exist, um, started off at a 30% share, and cord cutting was already taking place. But it really it slowly growed in popularity and usage as the primary choice, where in the last year and last 2 years, it has really taken off in popularity. And what's interesting to note, though, is even though this piece of research by Hub was pointing out how the big five, Netflix and Prime, Disney Plus, Hulu, and Max, are gaining this 46% share. If you take streaming in general, really, the real big headline is that streaming is even larger, and streaming has easily easily overshadowed traditional television or cable, because you have the free streaming platforms, which weren't necessarily highlighted in this report, but you have free streaming platforms, including the big two, Tubi and Pluto TV, as well as things like Plex, who have also experienced new highs over the summer in total viewers and hours engaged. So when you combine platforms like Tubi and Pluto TV and Plex, among others, and you add them to the platforms of Netflix and Prime, Disney Plus, Hulu, and Max, there's a majority share there now, and streaming is quickly growing. Meanwhile, um, cord cutting continues to accelerate. There was a number that I had seen in a research report back in August that reported that the total number of traditional cable subscribers in America is now down to like 60 to 70 million. That's an incredible decrease in such a short amount of time. Just a few years ago, it was over 100 million, and yet um, it continues every quarter to bleed consumers who are defecting because of well, a lot of things, but most especially price and the whole notion of a la carte, where people are getting fed up paying for channels that they never watch, and yet they must pay for. And of course, as we all know, anyone who has a cable or who had a cable subscription, we know that when you look at your cable bill, besides all of the FCC charges and the taxes, a primary charge there are for sports. And as popular as sports may seem in America, in the third largest nation on earth with more than 330 million people here in the United States, as popular as sports may seem in media, and it's completely dominant, but it is still not a majority of the population that goes to sports day in and day out. And if they do, there's a particular team that they're interested in, and they're not necessarily interested in leagues as they are. But nonetheless, you know, consumers get charged for channels such as ESPN, I've read reports over the years that ESPN had been getting as much as $8 to $10 a subscriber. That your monthly bill, as much as 8 to 10% of your monthly cable bill, that money, dedicated money, was going to ESPN, and then the regional sports networks started to get money as a part of your cable bill. So a lot of people are fed up with having to pay for sports that they're not interested in. They're also fed up with the continuing rise of the overall cable package, disputes between cable providers and networks, where there's the classic blackout now, where a whole group of channels are now no longer offered, but you're still paying the same amount of money on your cable bill. And then, of course, commercials, which a lot of people are fed up with, and the proliferation of and the increase of advertising. So all of this, as and throw in there inflation in a challenging economy, the cost of living, the cost of rent, mortgage, insurance. We can go on and on and on. In the end, we're talking about entertainment. We're not talking about healthcare. You know, so it is disposable income, which is probably something I think is safe to say a lot of people in entertainment have forgotten, that they are in entertainment and they're providing entertainment, and it's disposable income. And if people don't have the money, or you keep squeezing them, they're not going to have the money to give you or be willing to give you. So anyway, interesting that we now find ourselves, according to Hub Research, at this crossroads where streaming in total has really eclipsed traditional broadcasting and old school legacy cable. Now, when you look at the subscription video on demand category, um, Netflix is by far the leader. And in Hub's research, Netflix had a 26% share. And the interesting thing or impressive thing about that share is that Netflix's 26% share is equal to the percentage of consumers who say legacy cable television, such as Fios or Xfinity, is their first choice when watching television. So think about that. In this survey, 26% of people said Netflix is their number one go-to choice all the time when they go to the television. And Netflix's share is equal to the total amount of people who say that they go to cable in general and all of the different networks and channels that are on it. And so that's crazy impressive. And we've known for a while now through industry reports and certain rating services that are out there that Netflix is, of course, a giant in streaming and one of the pioneers in it. But every once in a while, a new piece of research comes out that really drives home just how dominant Netflix is. And when it comes to that category of media, in second place is Hulu. And Hulu had an 8% share. That's some disparity there. And then coming in third place, tied actually. Oh, I'm sorry, it was Amazon. Amazon Prime came in third at 6%, which was surprising because I would have thought, and I'm sure a lot of people would have thought that Amazon Prime would have had a larger share in this survey, but Amazon Prime came in third at 6%, and then tied was Max and Disney Plus with only 3%. So let me run that down again. In the subscription video on demand media category, Netflix is the by far the leader with a 26% share in this survey. And then way behind in second is Hulu at 8%. Amazon Prime comes in third at 6, and then Max and Disney Plus are tied with 3%, which I think is also surprising. I think a lot of people would argue that they believe those numbers would be low, but this was Hub Research's survey in August, and just for clarification, the survey was conducted with consumers who ranged from the ages of 16 to 74 and who had broadband access, and they only had to watch television, any type of television, um, at least 1 hour a week. So that was the requirements to take place in this survey. Diving a little bit deeper into Hub's research, they also looked into the motivation of consumers of these different type of media, streaming, broadcast, and cable. And the results really support the record-breaking contracts that broadcasters and cable channels have negotiated with sports leagues recently, because so many respondents said they continue to use live TV, not streaming, as their first choice, mostly because of sports. And if you look at what has been increasingly taking a share of programming on traditional broadcast networks, over the air networks, you see that live sports coverage is increasing. And it is one of the few remaining bright spots for traditional legacy or pay television, meaning cable. And even lower rated games among the different leagues draw more live viewers than most scripted or reality programming can generate today. And of course, those viewers are attractive to advertisers because most viewers will typically remain with a game until the end, and they fall into key demos for advertisers and marketers. Um, and we see this importance of live sports for this media segment really on the weekends, especially Saturday prime time now. When you get a chance, either go to tvguide.com or go to Titan TV where they have broadcast listings, or go to your local paper, which usually provides uh, the prime time listings for your area, and you will see that most, if not all, of the broadcast networks lately have devoted their prime time hours to football, college football. And then you have the cable channels doing the same thing, ESPN and its networks like ESPN2, ESPNU, the ACC network, the SEC network, right? Then you have Fox Sports 1 and 2, CBS Sports Network, TNT, TBS, right? They've all dedicated prime time hours to sports. And that's only going to increase as NBC negotiated the coverage rights for the NBA. And NBC has communicated that they plan on airing NBA matches during the weeknights, not just on weekends, to fill programming time in prime time. Um, Now, I mentioned, of course, TNT and TBS, and for those who may not follow it as closely, those networks, those channels, TNT and TBS, of course, lost their bidding battle to continue carrying NBA matches. And the result of that, of course, is that some analysts are saying that TNT and TBS could have just wither on the vine and become just another cable channel in obscurity if they can't replace the NBA with some sort of sports programming, live sports programming that will pull in viewers. So that'll be something interesting to take a look at as well and see what happens there. Um, Adding to all of this, of course, to the programming in cable and broadcast is a sudden collapse of regional sports networks, which has most profoundly affected Major League Baseball right now. And for those who aren't too familiar, regional sports networks, think in terms of the New York Yankees Yes Network or Madison Square Garden Network or uh, Sports New York, SNY, which carries the Mets. Well, there were regional sports networks across the nation. I think notably Bally branded network was one of them, and there were others that carried sports teams in a particular city or region, and a lot of them have failed. A lot of them have declared bankruptcy and have stopped programming, and to the point where Major League Baseball had to on its own fill in the void because there were several baseball teams where their regional sports network, which was the primary carrier of their games, stopped existing. And so some industry analysts that I've been reading are saying that TBS, TNT, they need to realize that their NBA days are likely over. They're not going to win any appeal, and that Here is an opportunity in baseball as well as hockey, the National Hockey League, and even soccer to pick up the pieces of what were regional sports networks' strengths and come to an agreement to carry these teams either on a regional basis or on a full network basis and carry those leagues. Be interesting to see if TNT decides to pivot, give up on trying to get the NBA back, and go deeper into hockey and baseball, which it started doing a couple of years ago and has been successful. So it could very well be that TNT and TBS will just expand their coverage and their investment in baseball and hockey. That'll be interesting to see. Interesting after sports, and without a doubt, sports is the number one reason why people go to live television, whether that's over the air, free TV, and they're going to ABC, CBS, NBC, or Fox, or they're going to cable for ESPN, Fox Sports, and so on. Sports is the number one attraction by percentage of people. After that, the second reason, and there's only two reasons that have really been given why people continue to go to traditional TV and cable, and that is sports and news. And so it's pretty evident that outside of sports, the last stronghold that live TV has on retaining viewers and securing its role as the first choice is news programming. And like it or not, politics plays a big role in that for live television outlets. And at the local level, local television stations have absolutely gone all in on expanding their local news programming and investing more and more hours of their programming day and night to local news because it's one of the very last pieces of content that a local television station can pull in meaningful ratings and advertising dollars. And I think here in the New York metro area where I'm located, it's very blatant. Um, whether it is whether it is one of the big network affiliates, and because it's New York City, every broadcast network affiliate, of course, is the flagship, right? But here in New York City, besides the CBS, NBC, ABC, and Fox affiliates, the local stations, primarily WPIX Channel 11, have gone all in on just expanding programming with news. And it's at the point here in this market where news programming starts around 4 a.m., 4:30 in the morning, the latest. And now you can tune in to most of the local over the air broadcast stations here in the New York area, and you will have continuous live news programming from about 4 a.m. until about 9 or 10, if not later. And this is a mix between network and local. WPIX Channel 11, a legendary broadcast legacy station, they're adding more and more news program and local news programming to their daily lineup. And they start very early in the morning as well. And they continue to add local news programming into their mornings now, where they used to stop at 8 or 9 a.m. They now go to 10 or 11, and then they pick it up at 5 in the afternoon, and they go to 7. And on the weekend, sometimes on a Saturday or a Sunday, WPIX will have news as early as 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. And the reason for this is because whether it's a local television station like WPIX in New York, which is affiliated with the CW network, or it's any of the network flagships here in the New York City area, local news pulls in the viewers. And interestingly, um, research shows, not Hub research, but other research that I've read recently indicate that while network programming, broadcast network programming, is free falling in the amount of people who watch it, and this includes network evening news. So think of the CBS Evening News, ABC World News Tonight. Usually come on around between 6 and 7 every evening, right? More people will tune in to their local television station to watch the local news more and more than the evening news, the network evening news. And then late night local news, usually a 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock broadcast, brings in meaningful advertising dollars and demos for the people um, who are looking to reach those audiences. Now, with the demos, of course, what's interesting about that is once you get below the age of 35, the amount of people, the percentage of people who are watching over the air free TV, broadcast television, just starts to recede greatly, more and more. By the time you get to 25, it is such a small percentage of people who are 25 years old or younger who are watching television. By the time you get to college and high school, it is very, very low. One research uh, report that I saw in July said the total number of that age group, college or below, that watch traditional television in any way, including going to it for local news, is less than 20%. Um, and then another report I read had that at actually at 12%. Either way, it's a very small percentage of people that are tuning into broadcast television. But there's a business aspect to this as well, though. If you are a local television station, and the average age of a broadcast TV viewer is now in the 60s, um, you're paying for union full-time employees to either be on air as the anchors or to be out in the field as the reporters. And so, as someone who has a background and roots in journalism as I do, I also kind of smirk at all of this in kind of a contemptible way, but I understand it's business. But if you are a local television station and you're not only facing the fact that your average viewer is over 60 years old, but that less and less people are even tuning in, you have this full-time staff that you have to pay for with benefits. And so why wouldn't you utilize this staff even more? So, not all that long ago, you would be paying, if you're the owner and management of a television station, you would be paying union money scale to your anchors and your reporters to maybe do two or three broadcasts a day, maybe a 1 hour news in the morning, and the 6 o'clock news, and at 10 or 11. Now you're utilizing these folks for hours and hours and hours. It's easily multiplied by at least two or three now times the amount of work that these folks are doing and the appearances they are making. So why wouldn't you? Um, just a little business aside to that. But interestingly enough, we know, I'm sure most of you are aware that even though sports in general is still a stronghold of free television and cable, it's slowly migrating to streaming. And we see that, of course, with Amazon carrying some Major League Baseball as well as football games. We see that with Apple TV as well. Um, and then there's things like NBC making NFL playoff game or some sports exclusively to Peacock, its streaming service. But that's still kind of in its infancy right now, where I guess the economics just don't justify going all in and migrating everything over to streaming as far as sports goes. There's still a larger audience, a much, much larger audience accessing broadcast television and cable for sports than for streaming right now. It'll be interesting to see how quickly that changes. ESPN, of course, had plans along with Fox um, to offer an app that would be sports exclusive, and Fubo, one of the leading sports themed streamers, um, successfully challenged and stopped that in court. So we'll see where that goes. But even ESPN, with all of the revenue that it's taking in from its ESPN and its sister channels, and from all of the fees that it gathers from cable and satellite television providers, um, even they are acknowledging that they're not going to be complacent, and that they're migrating toward offering more of a streaming solution for sports coverage. And an interesting aside to all of that, of course, is um, when you get again to the age of 25 or younger, who are consumers of sports. And we had mentioned this in the first podcast about sports advertising. It's worth noting again that when you get to that age group of 25 and younger, and the younger you go, there isn't as much of a uh, very strong interest in sports as there is with older folks. But for those who do consume sports in that age bracket, let's say recent college grad to high school, they're not interested in sitting down and watching an entire game, including the NFL. Um, they are getting most of their information about a particular game through highlights, and they keep up with their favorite team or teams or players through highlights. They're not watching an entire game, and or even a half a game. And you see this on YouTube and on X and other platforms, where networks like ESPN and Fox Sports and CBS Sports, um, they offer these very short highlights of what happened in a game. You see this on sports apps that are affiliated with the leagues as well, including MLB, where you could go in real time to a game that, let's say, is in the eighth inning, and you could hit a tab that will give you a summary of everything that has happened in the game You could even narrow that down to just the scoring plays. And attached to all of that are videos, usually 15, 30-second, if that, videos of a home run, a stolen base, a great catch in the outfield, whatever it may be. And really, more and more young people, recent college grads and younger, are gravitating to, quote, following sports that way, unquote. So that's an interesting thing to consider too, of where sports is heading and what streaming may do. Obviously, streaming would have more of an ability, I think, to cater to that type of need. So it's interesting to see where that's going to go. News, of course, getting back to news and politics, especially it being presidential election year in the United States. Um, even though the total viewers for CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News are down from what they were in their heyday years ago, especially during a presidential election year, the numbers do go up, and they still, especially in prime time, or if there's a convention or a speech of particular note, they do attract viewers. Um, can guarantee you, last night here in the New York City area, the New York City Mayor Eric Adams, word came out around 10 o'clock last night that he was going to be indicted, and that multiple charges would be unsealed in court today. And so that was breaking news here in the New York area. It was the first time in New York City's history, which is a little hard to believe, but it was the first time in New York City history that a sitting mayor had been indicted like that on federal charges. And then today, locally, of course, you have the mayor of the largest city in the United States with all of these charges, and you can guarantee that the local news programs across the board are going to have higher viewerships, um, because news is, other than sports, the only remaining thing that pulls in viewers. It's not scripted television, it's not reality TV. Those folks who are interested in that stuff primarily go to the streaming services to watch that. They're not going to live TV. So, really, streaming services so far have demonstrated almost zero interest in diving into news programming. And unless they want more money, which of course they all do, but unless they really want to invest in their own news programming and staff, uh, what they have mostly done is they carry the networks. They carry the news networks, the cable news networks, and the local television. I'm sure anyone who is a subscriber to any of the streamers, you've seen the proliferation of local news programming affiliates on your service of your choice. And so, unless they really want to get into having branded news like Netflix news or Pluto TV news or Hulu news, um, which right now seems a long stretch for that to happen. It could very well be that sports will migrate to streaming, and news will become the last bastion, the last stronghold for television and local television, legacy TV as we know it. And it could be, well, very well, how that plays out. Um, and there's reasons for streaming providers to kind of stay away from getting into the news, because a lot of research has indicated that consumers are tired of the typical free TV experience, meaning commercials, too many commercials, and predictable content or tired content. Um, And Hub's research and their survey in August reported clear decision making choices for consumers of these specific media categories. And in the Hub report, they stated that viewers choosing platforms such as Netflix and Prime or Max, they did so mostly because they had access to a favorite show or a series. Consumers of live TV gravitated toward it for sports and news. And those who went to free streamers such as Tubi or Pluto, they enjoyed the variety of choice. So it's very interesting that Hub Research clearly laid out that right now the landscape of television is pretty clear on why people go to certain media, and each one has its strengths right now. So, armed with all of this research, what do you think legacy TV broadcasters and cable TV can do to stop the decline? Um, Interestingly, Barry Diller, a legendary entertainment executive, um, who is currently trying to acquire Paramount, said in a conference last week that these legacy traditional media sources need to realize and accept that their era of dominance is over, and there's no going back, and that they need to reposition themselves and think of themselves as not necessarily being broadcasters, but being entertainment producers, being studios and content creators, and make money through the distribution. And it's an interesting take on it by Diller, because for generations this was kind of the model, the business model for ABC, CBS, and NBC. Now, granted, before cable, they were the only choices that you had. But those three networks, and later on Fox, um, they've been making money hand over fist with the advent of the independent television stations that go back to the 1950s and syndication. And it's through syndication that a nice amount of revenue and profit was realized by these networks, and really really starting in the late 60s and into the 70s. um, these broadcast networks started to become either partners with production companies, or they owned it outright and produced it itself, these shows. And after a show would run its course, and many times before a show ended its first run on a network, it would already be in syndication, and a portion of that money would go back to the networks. And what Diller is saying kind of goes back to that business model of create content, and through its distribution, you're still going to have a major role in the entertainment industry. You're still going to make profit, and you're still going to have influence. And Diller's point might be on target too, if you look at the fact that whether it's Netflix or it's other streamers, they've actually have pulled back on the number of productions they are creating. And there is a window there. There's a door. There's a door that is opening for ABC, CBS, NBC to go through and to reestablish themselves in the industry by creating content. And that's what Diller believes needs to be done. What's interesting is when it comes to Paramount, he's trying to acquire Paramount, and of course, Paramount owns CBS, and then there's other channels that fall under Paramount, like MTV and Nickelodeon, and it really makes sense because there's content that can be produced within the infrastructure of the company, and then there's content that they can create that will be for purchasing. And you could see a Netflix, you could see a Tubi or Pluto TV. Pluto TV is part of Paramount. You could see streamers like Hulu or Disney Plus or whoever. You could see them going into partnerships of acquiring content that they don't need to produce, and they don't need to own outright. It's an interesting concept, and we'll see where that leads to. But here you have one of the most influential um, executives in entertainment saying these legacy these legacy television companies, especially the over-the-air free broadcast networks, really need to end the fight of thinking that they're going to go back to the days when it was just the three of them and they had, whatever, 60, 70 million people tuning in on a night. You're lucky now if you take all of the broadcast networks combined. You're lucky if you get a few million people some nights watching prime time exclusively on television like that. So interesting take by Diller. Just one or two other things to mention here as we wrap this up is the TV landscape. What's interesting about all of this too, with this hub research, is that it had not really dived into the adaption of other media by older demos. And so I did some research into that. And what's interesting is what continues to be the fact here is that when you go 60 years of age or older, it is true, at least according to the research that I've looked at, that consumers of television who are 60 years old or older basically refuse to adapt to the streaming services. They don't subscribe to Netflix as much. They don't download the apps. They continue really to go to cable, legacy cable, or broadcast television. And but those numbers are increasing, though. I think to flip that a bit, to take a look at the other side of the coin on this, is that over the last several years, though, more and more people of that age group, of that demo, are subscribing to streaming services. They are downloading apps. They are going to things like Netflix or Amazon Prime. They're not necessarily going to services like Tubi or Pluto TV, and that just could be for that age group. That's just too much of a hassle. But they are going to things like Netflix. They are going to things like Disney Plus. One of the biggest inroads that have been made in getting access to that age group have been the smart TVs, and it was a brilliant industry move because research continues to show that the oldest age demos, while they're not downloading apps on their laptops, their phones, their tablets, um, they are accessing and utilizing more things like Netflix and Hulu, and Disney Plus um, through smart TV because it's all built in. One of the reasons why the older demo retains cable is simply they're familiar with it and how it works. That's the media. That's the media that they are accustomed to, and it'll be interesting to see as the cord cutting continues. Research that comes out that really dives into of all of the people left that still subscribe to cable television or satellite, things like DirecTV or Dish, something like that. Um, what is the breakdown of the age bracket? How many people who are using legacy cable television are of a 55 to 60 years old and up age bracket? Broadcast television, of course, besides all of the numbers that we've thrown out today showing its decline, broadcast TV kind of gets a bad rap, in the sense that really cable TV is kind of in the same boat with broadcast television. You don't really hear much that cable television has an increasingly older demo as well. A lot of focus is on the broadcast television and the age bracket of people who watch that. But cable TV demo is getting older and older, um, rapidly as well too. So just an interesting aside to wrap all of this up. I hope that you continue to check us out. We'll have more written content and more videos on our YouTube channel. You can find us. The one centralized place that you can find all of this is at geneking.com. Wow, I messed up my own website. It's genekinglive.com. And on genekinglive.com, you will find everything that's there. You'll find the YouTube channel, you'll find the podcasts, you'll find the newsletters, our social media accounts, everything that is there, including some cool news too, that I post on there. So you can either find us on genekinglive.com, or you can go to substack.com and type in mediums, messages, and more, and you can find us there as well. And on that, you'll find the podcast and you'll find a lot of written content. So this is Gene wishing everyone a wonderful day, night, work night, weekend, whenever you're listening. And we will come back soon with more to talk about on mediums, messages, and more.